In this presentation, I want to present my last paper with Paul Anderson, Mashawadi, and Jadanglu from the North. The title of this paper is Investigation of Synergy between Extended Oil Recovery and Hydrogen Storage in a Producing Field using the Norne reservoir model. To reach net zero CO2 emission by 2050, there are various strategies, including lifestyle correction, energy efficiency, increasing energy efficiency, electrification, and using renewable energies, using hydrogen energy and fuel, and employing carbon capture and storage. That in this study, we focus on the hydrogen energy. The hydrogen energy has different types and colors based on the sources. For example, the gray hydrogen is produced from the fossil fuels and natural gas, and the blue hydrogen with the same source is coupled with the carbon capture and the storage that avoids releasing the CO2 in the air. And the green hydrogen is produced through the green energies, like the wind energy. And the yellow hydrogen we produce it from the electrolysis using solar power, and pink hydrogen is produced through the nuclear energy. The hydrogen storage, for using the hydrogen, we need to store hydrogen, and generally we have two strategies for this. We can store hydrogen on the surface in the tanks, and also we can store the hydrogen underground in subsurface. Storing the hydrogen on the surface has some challenges, like that we need a lot of space to do it, and also it's so dangerous. However, we can use it for the first steps of the hydrogen energy supply, that after production we can store it and then we can supply it we can store it for the short term. However, for long-term hydrogen storage and storing the excessive hydrogen after supply, especially in the low seasons like the summer, we need to store it underground, and we can inject the hydrogen underground in the summer, and the excessive hydrogen we can inject it underground, and also in the winter and high season and high demand we can produce it and use it. For underground hydrogen storage, we have different options. We can do it in the salt domes, in aquifers, and the depleted oil and gas reservoirs. In this work, we use depleted oil and gas reservoirs because they have proved still caprock. They need low cushion gas, less cushion gas. It's cheaper, and also there are data. The data is available from the previous operations and the production. In the process of underground hydrogen storage, we have three main governing mechanisms, which are mixing caused by gravitational forces, viscous forces, capillary forces, and diffusion. We have residual trapping by capillary forces and wettability, and dissolution. And the other process that we use in this study and technology that we use is CO2 enhanced oil recovery. In CO2 enhanced oil recovery, we store CO2 underground and in the oil and gas reservoirs, and also we use CO2 for improving the oil recovery. That in this process, we inject the captured CO2 underground to increase the oil mobility, and also increase the pressure, reduce the viscosity, and produce more oil. During this process, some part of the CO2 is stored underground, and some part is produced beside the oil, that it can be separated on the surface and re-injected again underground. The objectives of this study are investigating the effects of different EOR methods on underground hydrogen storage the effect of oil production on underground hydrogen, and finding the synergy and the interactions between the oil production and the underground hydrogen storage, simultaneous oil production and UHS, comparing the CO2 WAG and the separate and continuous CO2 and water flooding strategies on both oil production and the underground hydrogen storage, and finding the effect of the well types and location on the efficiency of the operation. To doing this, we chose Norne field as a case of a study. This model is an open source model, and it has a black oil PVT model. So for a study of EOR, hydrogen storage, and CO2 recovery, CO2 EOR and storage, we need a compositional model. So we created a compositional model for this for the Norne field, and then we depleted the reservoir with 3 different strategies: water flooding, CO2 and water continuous and separate CO2 water flooding, and CO2 WAG. And for each EOR method in this study, we performed underground hydrogen storage after the full depletion of the reservoir, and also in another and separate case, independent case, we perform the underground hydrogen storage during the oil production. And here you can see a 3D map of the oil, gas, and water saturation of the Norne field in the beginning of the in the initial condition of the Norne field, that it's visible, so that we have oil, gas, and water as the main phases. To create a compositional model, we used the data available from the DSC well tests, from the exploration wells or development or the other wells during the history of the Norne, and they are open data, but it needs some study to find them. And we could extract the initial composition of the fluid composition of the Norne, and also we could find the fluid properties like the bubble point pressure, densities, gas oil ratio, viscosities, temperature, and so on. And by having this, we could create a PVT model that here you can see the phase plot of the final compositional fluid model. As I said, we have 3 different EOR methods in this study, and for each one of them, we try to inject CO2 and water in a way that we have the same cumulative water and CO2 injection. That in the WAG, we have 6 EOR wells in all of the cases. That in the WAG, we inject 4 months CO2 injection, and we have 6 months water injection. All 6 wells doing these injections cyclically. And in separate CO2 and water flooding, 3 wells continuously inject CO2 and 3 wells continuously injects water. And in water flooding, all 6 wells injects water continuously. And also for performing the UHS, we use one of the EOR wells, and we change its application from the EOR to hydrogen well. And its application based on the previous EOR method on that strategy changes from CO2 water flooding, CO2 injector, water injector to this hydrogen injector and producer. And after changing this, we made some changes to the nearest well, nearest EOR well to the hydrogen well, to have the same cumulative water injection or water and CO2 injection. For example, in the separate CO2 and water flooding, the hydrogen well previously was CO2 injector and changes to hydrogen injector. And in this case, the nearest valve application from the water injector will change. It will change to a CO2 injector, and the rate somehow will change to have the same cumulative CO2 and water injection. In this regard, we have three cases. We have a base case that we produce oil without any other operation with three different EOR methods that we deplete the reservoir until 2050. We have a UHS during oil production strategy that for each EOR case, we perform the UHS between 2030 and 2060. And we have a depleted case that after full depletion reservoir, we start the hydrogen storage on 2050, and it will continue until 2080. And here you can see the 3D map of the oil, water, and gas saturation in 2030 that hydrogen storage will start, and it somehow is comparable with the initial condition you saw in previous slides. In the results, at first we tried to compare the compositional model and black oil model in different properties. The first one is the field pressure. We can see a very slight difference in the field pressure. That probably it's because that is not probably different. It's because of some changes, a little bit changes in the oil in place and gas in place that caused changes in the pressure. However, in the bottom hole pressures, we had a very good match. This shows that we can use this PhD model without any changes. Regarding the oil recovery, in between these three cases, the three different EOR methods, we see that the CO2 WAG case had the best performance in the oil recovery, that we could produce around 57% of total oil in place. And the two other cases they had almost the same and almost the same performance. And here we can see that, however, we changed one of our EOR wells to the hydrogen well for the hydrogen storage during oil production. We had a very slight reduction in the oil recovery. That's by extending the life of the reservoir for more than 10 years. We could compensate this amount, and also the recovery increased from the previous condition, and it reached to 58%. And to explain this better, here we can see in both that case and also the continuous and separate CO2 and water flooding, we have the same pressure. However, the WAG case had the better performance in the oil recovery. That is because of the better performance. That is because of the process that we have in the WAG case, that water and CO2 have different gravitational effect, and it can better sweep the oil during the process. And here you can see the water flooding. In water flooding, we had a higher pressure, but it had the same performance like the CO2 and water flooding, and weaker performance respect to the WAG case. And also respect to the CO2 storage, in the WAG case, we can see only 40% of the injected CO2 reproduced through the oil wells, and 60% is stored during the injection processes. However, the recovered reproduced CO2 will be separated and reinjected, but this shows that in the WAG case, we had very better performance with respect to continuous CO2 injection. And here we can compare the processes of the CO2 and the mechanism of the CO2 storage in the both in these two different strategies. And in the WAG case, in the WAG case, we had the better CO2 storage and in the mechanism of oil, CO2 dissolution in oil, CO2 dissolution in the water, and also CO2 residual trapping. And we had a very, very low free CO2 at the end. And regarding the hydrogen storage, totally in the first vision, we can see that for hydrogen storage during the oil production, totally we had better performance, and also in the back case we had almost a little bit better performance in all cases, that we could recover 95% of injected hydrogen at the end. And in the cases of the hydrogen storage in the depleted reservoirs, the case which is developed by water flooding had the best performance with 90% efficiency. For better understanding, we can see that the hydrogen dissolution in the oil and the trapping of hydrogen in the oil in the WAG case for the hydrogen storage during oil production is the lowest one, and here we can see for the water flooding that had better performance in the hydrogen storage in depleted reservoir. It's less than the others. And also we have this in the hydrogen trapped in the as a gas, which is the amount of residual trapped hydrogen. Again, here in the back case, we have lowest one, and here in the water flooding is the lowest. And at the end of the process of the hydrogen storage, the amount of mobile hydrogen is very low. For the cases of hydrogen storage during oil production. However, we have more hydrogen remain in the reservoir as a free gas in these cases of hydrogen storage in depleted reservoirs. And for better visualization, here we could compare the hydrogen mole fraction at the end of the per process of hydrogen storage in all 6 cases. And here in the back case and hydrogen storage during oil production, we can see very low hydrogen dispersion and also very low mole fraction. And also here for the depleted cases, the water flooding case had the best performance and the lowest mole fraction. In this process, we faced a challenge that for the hydrogen storage during oil production, some part of the hydrogen was produced from oil wells, and we had hydrogen breakthrough into the oil wells. That this causes of hydrogen loss somehow. It's so difficult to separate them and process it. And around 17% of recovery of hydrogen in these cases was from the oil wells. That is not good, and it's a challenge that should be addressed. For this, to address this, we try to put some constraints on the hydrogen mole fraction in the oil wells, that when the mole fraction of the hydrogen reaches to 0.1, the oil production stops in each well separately. In the reference for doing this study, we created a reference case that in this reference case we use the hydrogen storage during oil production using WAG, and we didn't any change to it, and do it with the hydrogen injection rate of 10 power 5 standard cubic meter per day, and produce the hydrogen, we produce the gas with the rate of the 1.5 times 10 power 5 standard cubic meter per day. Also, we try to test the effect of and investigate the effect of the injection rate on the hydrogen storage efficiency. We did it with the low rate and high rate, 10 power 5 and 10 power 6, and do it from different wells, EOR well and the oil well. This EOR well was on the corner of the reservoir, and this oil well, well K3H, is in the center of the reservoir. As a result, in the cases of the hydrogen storage with the low rate, you can see here that by putting the constraint, we can see that respect to the case without constraint, we had a high reduction in the oil, in the hydrogen breakthrough into the oil wells, that we could control it perfectly. However, we had a slight reduction in the total hydrogen recovery and production. And also in the cases of hydrogen storage with a high rate, we can see here we had very, very low hydrogen breakthrough into the oil wells. And in the next step, we try to compute the real efficiency of hydrogen recovery from UHSL, that it's only the hydrogen which is produced from the UHSL well, and it didn't consider the hydrogen which is produced from the oil wells. Our base case that we saw in the beginning, that was without constraint, is this red case that we see here, that by putting the constraint, we could produce more hydrogen in some cases, not more, we had better efficiency. It's relative and normalized, yeah. And we had better efficiency, and especially in the case that we performed the UHS from the EOR well at the corner of the reservoir with a high rate, that the efficiency was around 85%. Also, however, we put constraint on the oil wells, and sometimes during the oil production, the production was stopped because we reached the constraints of hydrogen breakthrough into the oil wells. Except one case, we had the same or better performance in the oil recovery. That this case, that that is the hydrogen storage through the previous oil well with the high rate. We had recovery around 60%. That is higher than the base case, much higher than the base case. That was around 57%. And the reason of this is that the oil well, the UHS well, that was oil well, could produce some part of the oil through the hydrogen well, that during the purification of the hydrogen and separation of the phases, this oil can be separated easily, and it can be used, and it has its added value all separately to the process that can be considered in the next studies that we compute the final MPV of UHS, underground hydrogen storage. And as a conclusion, here we can see converting a water injector, converting an EOR well to the hydrogen storage well could reduce slightly their oil recovery, but by continuing the oil production and extending the reservoir life, this part was compensated. And also, the CO2 WAG had the best performance in the all oil recovery, hydrogen recovery, and CO2 storage, that we could store 60% of the injected CO2 in the first process of the CO2 injection without any re-injections. And we could cut the hydrogen breakthrough by 80% and increase the recovery from 53% recovery of hydrogen from 53% to 80%, the real recovery of hydrogen from 53% to 80% without lowering the oil production. And for the hydrogen storage in the depleted reservoirs, the water flooding had the best performance. The case that the reservoir was depleted with the water flooding had the best performance in the hydrogen recovery. And finally, the corner wells that with the high UHS rate improved the hydrogen recovery, and it had the best performance in the hydrogen recovery efficiency. And this shows that the effect of the well location in the underground hydrogen storage. And thank you for your attention.